What does Newcastle do well football-wise? What makes this a good... I want to go through the team because, look, I'm making excuses for it, right? We often talk about the Big Six. We talk about the Big Six on the show. We try to talk about them all the time. The fact is Newcastle are fourth in the table right now. So I want to understand, without talking about how brilliant the fans are. Okay, they're brilliant, great. And I'm sorry, I know you brought up war flags. You got it out of your... Yeah, I know. But you know what? It's the same fans who were there before. And I know they got a lift. Now they didn't. Fans are important, but they can't turn a mediocre team into a good one.
They can't. But they can turn an atmosphere, can't they? They can turn an atmosphere anywhere toxic. Any set of
they can turn it toxic. Now, in this case, obviously, that's not what's happening.
No, so, but they can also be an asset.
So, walk me through Newcastle, right? I'm a big Nick Pope guy. I think for me, he's possibly the best English keeper. Solid. You can debate it with Ramsdale. I would have him ahead of Pickford. You might not. I also tend to like tall goalkeepers. Obviously, they didn't have a bad goalkeeper before, but he's been an upgrade, and he's added value.
Yeah.
At the back, they got Sven Botman, who's done very well. Shaw's
improved share. Eddie Howe's improved him.
Can you talk about that? Because again, correct my assessment of share. You had a center back who was quite comfortable on the ball, I thought. Yeah. But sometimes would get a little bit bullied and stuff, and not always make the right decisions and get under pressure.
Yeah.
What has Eddie Howe done with him?
So the relationship between Fabian Schär and Sven Botman is super quick, as you know. So then Fabian Schär can get really tight to defenders, which suits him. Sometimes he likes to sit off and get on the ball because he can play, but his main asset is getting tight. And he can get sometimes in front of centre forwards, or he can get super tight from behind, knowing if the centre forward rolls him, he's got Sven Botman behind him. He's got Kieran Trippier to his right-hand side. He's got Dan Burn, who's a brilliant centre-half, playing out of his skin at left-back. Matt Targett can't get in the side. So the Eddie Howe factor, it's improving the players. People can always sort of say, well, yeah, but he's had money to spend. He's had money to spend. So what? You got to spend it wisely.
Yeah, no. I think that's a very simplistic attitude. Because, again, they've spent a lot of money. Isak hasn't contributed. And a big chunk of it was on that. You know, we've seen in recent years, we've seen teams like Villa spend a lot of money. We've seen Leicester spend a lot of money. So it's not going to be an instant upgrade.
Don't you feel as though the signing of Bruno Guimaraes?
Well, I want to get to Guimaraes, but I need your help. You to help explain the defense a little bit more, right? Trippier, I feel Trippier is a little bit one-dimensional. What he does is very good, though, and he brings a lot of leadership skills. I think the way Newcastle's set up, whatever defensive failings he has, and I think he does.
Best defensive record in the league so far.
Well, that's fine, but the people around him, Howe's done a good job. Yeah. I think making sure Trippier isn't exposed. Dan Burn on the other side is not something I understand. I didn't understand him before, and not because he's bad, but simply because when you are that tall.
See, I knew you were going to bring the height into it. Why can't you be 6'5" and be a good left back?
I think he's even taller than that.
Is he? Well, all right.
Well,
because probably on the eye, it's not conventional, is it?
So the average, the basic region is simply one of biomechanics, right?
Yeah.
When you are that tall and you're up against small wingers, it's harder for you to have the quickness and the lateral movement because you're further away from the ground.
But that's when you do have a football brain, not to get too tight to someone. If you're playing against Bernardo Silva, for example, who's playing on that right hand side for Man City, you ain't going to show him inside. You will show him inside because you show him into traffic, but you wouldn't want to get done, so you might be a little bit narrow. So there's the coaching from Eddie Howe. Dan Burn gets narrow to Sven
he had
Botman.
good coaching before at his previous club as well, because obviously he's played in that kind of role before. Yeah. But it is pretty... I remember Dan Burn at Fulham, and he's been around the block a little bit. I think it was the year that... There's one year, I think it was Moyes at United, when he was playing center back in that game, and United were just, under Moyes, were just pumping balls into the box. And I think he had like 74 headers or something stupid like that. Yeah. All of it, right? But this is a different position he's playing. It's a different role. Can you talk about what does that bring to Newcastle?
Well, what it brings, I tell you what, he's better on the ball than people think, just because he's 6'7" or wherever he is. He's
I'm not saying he's bad on the ball.
But he brings a presence, Gab. If you've got, say Kieran Trippier's on the right hand side, because all these systems always fascinate me when someone says, it's a flat back four, which it is when you haven't got the ball. As soon as you've got the ball, the game will never change if you're all playing a four. It always turns into a three. Right. So Dan Burn comes in one. Sven Botman goes across one. Cher goes across one, turns into 3 because Trippier's attacking down the right-hand side.
And it's usually that. It's not often that Trippier is the guy who tucks into it because Dan Burn is romping up the wing.
But very rarely.
Right.
That's why you see a lot of attacks for Newcastle predominantly down the right-hand side. So it's work. It's time on the training ground. It's the message from the manager, and it's also the player understanding what he's good and what he's bad at. Dan Burn doesn't want to get sucked into Bernardo Silva getting 1v1s, does he? He wants to give him a yard.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.